Welcome to the Paul Spradley Show, a show dedicated to real strategies from real people practicing real leadership in diverse and inclusive cultures. And now here's your host, CEO of the diversity training firm, the Care-Based Leadership Collaborative, Dr. Paul David Spradley.
Man, it feels like it's been forever. It really hasn't. It just feels like it's been forever. I want to let you in on a little television podcast secret. If a host ever says my next guest needs no introduction, they're either completely forgot to draft up the introduction or the guest truly needs no introduction. Either way, it's not a very professional look from the host. So there, you've got my tip. My next guest truly needs no introduction. She is a woman with so many talents, too many to list. Seriously, right. Brittany KinderSmith is an author, singer, poet. She's a person who's passionate about people. She loves great rock and roll music and has delicious yet healthy foods are things that she enjoys as well too. What I appreciate most about Brittany is that she's a woman who has figured out how to be an ally for social justice in her own way. And we'll talk about that shortly. But Brittany, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello. So lots of stuff to get into.
Yep.
But I want to talk about your shirt.
Yes.
Your shirt, for those folks that are listening, says white people, top line, end racism, period, bottom line.
Yes.
You are a white woman.
I am.
How did you come about wearing that shirt?
Well, a friend of mine who is a woman from the Pittsburgh area, her name is Christina Springer, she actually designed this shirt and sells this shirt, and she shared it with me, and I purchased it, and I wear it, because that's why I purchased it.
But I feel like, so there had to be some things that happened before that, right? So you saw the shirt, and you're like, oh, as a white woman, I'm going to get this shirt, because
yes.
I can also imagine the looks that you get when you wear the shirt. Do you get looks? Do you have people that are questioning? Do folks get angry? Like, what is the reaction of other white people when they see you in that shirt?
Well, it's interesting you ask, because I feel like I think I impose what I expect that people are going to do. So like if someone's looking at me and I'm wearing this shirt, I'm like, well, yeah, I'm wearing this shirt. Like, you have a problem with it, blah, blah, blah. Just because they're like a wealthy middle-aged white man. Which, I mean, it's hard not for me to go all in on that stereotype, if I'm being honest. But it is different, but not different than being like calling them closed-minded, right? I have no idea what their beliefs are if I have not spoken to a person.
Right.
So I remember one day at the park, I thought this woman who was probably in like her late 50s, early 60s, there with her grandchild, kept looking at me while I had this shirt on. And I was like, oh, geez Louise. Like, she looked like she was really giving me nasty looks, and I was all in my head about it. Like, oh man, I am ready. Like, as soon as she says something to me, I am ready to be like, listen, lady. And then we were swinging our kids at the same time, and she said, I just have to ask you about your shirt. And she said it kind of like that, and so I was like, I don't know which way this is going. So I said, oh, yeah, what about it? And she just started like a genuine conversation, like, well, what does it mean? And I thought she was giving me looks all that time because she was like, ugh, what is this? And instead it was because she was just trying to figure out what it meant and like why it was on the shirt. Yeah, and she had an entire conversation with me about it.
Tell me about that conversation. What did y'all talk about?
Well, I explained to her that the reason I wear the shirt is because it's no one besides white people can fix a problem that we have created and we have perpetuated for all of time, basically, okay? So it's not up to people of color to say, here's how we're gonna fix this problem, because y'all have been trying to tell us how to fix this problem for a really long time.
So that's actually really interesting. Could you tease out maybe a little bit what you were saying in that conversation with the woman, right?
Sure.
She was genuinely curious.
Yes. So the first way that I kind of went in on it was explaining to her that in general, it's just not a thing that is the responsibility of Black people or people of color or whoever is being othered in any of those situations to correct it. The only people who can correct it are the people who have created it and perpetuated it. And in the case of anti-Blackness, that is white people. That is me. That is that woman at the park. And I explained that to her, and she said, oh, okay. And I'm not going to try and say, quote, what she asked next. I don't remember what it was. She asked me a question that I would call like naive and like racist in ideals, but not racist on her part in that way. She wasn't trying to be a bad human, but as many woke people now know, we're all racist. We're doing it all the time, all day long, every time like you see someone, it's a challenge to unlearn all of these things. And so I was talking to her about that after she had asked the question, like, well, when you thought that, when that was the first thing that came to mind to ask about, like, is that the first thing you would ask about if I told you that, you know, I had a friend who was going through a really hard time and needed a place to stay? She'd be like, well, how did they get in that position? And if you would, then fine, that's just the kind of person you are. It's not the kind of person I am. So when I see people who are being hurt, who are struggling in like day-to-day life, it's just my nature to want to help them. So there is no possible way to ignore an entire race of people being attacked in the country that I live in.
Well, so there is a way to ignore. People have done it very successfully. They're great at it.
For me, there's no way to ignore.
How have those conversations gone? Like, have you had anybody that wanted to learn more? Like, do you feel like you're planting the seed, or does it often, are people coming at you and you have to feel like you're defending your shirt?
No, I was very much prepared to have to do that. And I think that, as I was saying before, I kind of learned the more times I wore it, like, okay, this isn't going to happen. Like, people aren't just going to come up and try and start fights with me. I'm sure some people, some places would. It's just the day-to-day life. Like, no one was coming up to me at the grocery store and yelling at me or anything like that. But I was ready if they were going to. What happened was that more people, the less when I wore it and was around people I would expect to be offended by it. I was, I think, probably carrying myself differently, like projecting myself differently. Like, I'm not looking open to a conversation. I'm looking to shut down your belief system. And no one's going to come up and talk to me about that in a way where anything is going to be learned by either person in the conversation. It's just not going to work. And I've been so hard on people for so long, like, how can you think this? Why do you think this? And I'm not saying I don't still have those questions, but when you're yelling them at someone, they're not going to give you answers back. It's not going to work. And that actually is why I got off social media, because that's all it teaches you to do, is just scream at people. Yeah.
What's interesting is I bring up social media in my trainings, right? And I talk about how we don't have the skill sets to talk to people about when we differ.
Yeah.
We don't.
It's hard now.
It's either we talk and agree or we disagree and fight.
Yes.
And those aren't only options. We don't have the skill sets to talk through. So oftentimes I'm sort of going backwards and teaching people, like, here's what it means to have a dialogue and listen, and to repeat what you heard the other person say, and then not respond from a space of like anger or aggression. So and it's hard to have those conversations in the grocery store when you have a shirt that causes people to think. And I actually want to come back to your shirt in a little bit, but what would you say is your hope for that woman, right? So you've gone through a process where you've been educating yourself.
Sure.
What's the starting point for that woman who's on the swing next to you, who has the courage to ask about your shirt because she genuinely wants to have dialogue.
Right.
What's that process for her?
Well, I think the starting point was asking about the shirt instead of just looking at it and wondering and creating her own narrative in her head about what I meant one way or the other.
Yeah.
And I think the next step after that is having a meaningful dialogue. She did listen to me. She did like look at me and make eye contact with me. We had an entire conversation, even in the presence of children, which is miraculous that we even knew what sentences to finish. But I think after that, my hope would be that she will go and do one thing to educate herself, at least. Like, that's like my bare minimum hope for what she'll do to further her own knowledge on the subject matter. But I think that the thing that is more likely to happen, and what I hope happens in terms of like the further reaching impact of it, is that she might just be slightly more emboldened by having had a conversation with another white woman who agreed with her. She just happened to be someone who she didn't disagree with the shirt. I just think it's not a shirt she would have chosen to wear.
Absolutely.
And I think that once you can give someone a conversation with you, and you can give them a part of yourself, you are a human to them, and you are showing them they are a human to you. And when you can have a human-to-human connection and a human-to-human conversation, and you take the time to do that, hopefully that person will carry that into another conversation.
Yeah.
So maybe she'll feel emboldened at, a family meal to question her son and say, why do you think that? Or why don't you want to vote for so-and-so? Just small questions, but those small questions are how to start.
Absolutely.
We can't white people aren't going to end racism by waking up tomorrow and deciding collectively, none of us are racist anymore. Like, it's embedded in our entire life. It's systemic. You can't just undo it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice?
It would. I actually am working on a product right now that would end racism.
Oh.
It's like a pill.
I was just going to ask
like
if
a
it was
red pill and a blue pill.
Oh.
So one of them, I haven't figured out which one's going to be the end racism pill.
What's the other one?
I haven't
going
figured
to
that
be?
out. Well, it's
Oh.
likely flying, like the ability to fly for a little bit.
Okay.
So it's end racism.
I'm sorry to tell you that I think most people would pick the flying pill.
Okay, then I need to
I wouldn't.
means
but
more even.
yeah, maybe like instant death.
Now, what? No.
I still think some people would pick that pill. No.
I'm going to find something more completely different.
People would pick that pill.
10-year-old Brittany
Yes.
wasn't having these conversations because the world wasn't fostering them. Now, she might have started having the curiosities. When did you start thinking about things differently? And what was the catalyst for you? Was it your parents? Was it your environment? Was there a person or people that were saying, hey, have you thought about this from a different perspective? Because it's really hard. So there's research that suggests that a white male, by the time he's 6 years old, understands that he is the leader of his peers. And so there's just things that are just baked into school culture, to community culture. At what point did you start questioning things differently, start thinking about things differently, start asking different questions? Because journey starts with a single step.
Right.
Can you point back to when this process started for you?
In terms of specifically trying to stand up for Black people, no. But in terms of thinking about justice and the world in general, yes. When I was younger than 10, my mom was a very generous-hearted woman. She once picked up a hitchhiker with my baby brother in the car and myself. Like, it was just, and I tell people that story now and they are like horrified, and I'm like, but nothing happened. Like, we gave a person who needed it a ride.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a thing to her.
I picked up 4 hitchhikers in my life.
Yeah, I picked up 2.
I pick up more, but I don't see them out anymore.
There are not many. No, that's true. Sorry. So my mom and I were at the grocery store. I had just had a birthday, so I had gotten my birthday card money from my grandma. And we went grocery shopping, and we left, and there was a person outside with a sign. The sign said, "Hungry, please help." I could read. I think I was like 6 maybe, and so I asked my mom, like, what does that mean? And so, like, as we continue driving down the road, she's explaining to me that, some people don't have the things that we have. Some people can't afford to have food. And we were not well-off people. So this to me was like, people have less than I have. This is bad.
Yeah.
And I made her turn around, and I went and I gave that person my birthday card money. And I don't say that because, like, oh, well, I think everyone should be really proud of me that little me did that. But, like, that is I remember that whole afternoon so clearly. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the way that my parents were really just kind of embedded to me that, like, you're not above or better than anyone else for anything that you're doing. Like, I don't care if you become the president. I don't care if you become a brain surgeon. You're still not better than the person who is the janitor at your school. And that was a really important lesson that I learned from a very young age. And so I think at 10, sometimes I was having these conversations. Yeah. I remember being confronted by a friend of mine. Her name is Lorian. She went to school with me in Indiana, where I'm from. And she was the first Black female at my elementary school at that time that was like in our class or anything. I already must have had some of the obsessive tendencies that I have as an adult, worrying about how I'm being perceived. It was very important to me that I felt like I had to make sure that she was included, which is very weird to me now. I don't know. And I just remember one day I was standing in front of the mirror in the bathroom. We had one full-length mirror in our hallway bathroom in our elementary school. And I was standing in front of it doing, I don't know, whatever a 10-year-old needs to do in front of a mirror. Yay, America.
See their ears.
And Lorian was behind me, and I didn't move out of the way. And I didn't think anything of that. And she straight up was like, "Are you not moving because I'm Black?" And I was like, "No, I would never do." Like, I started crying. It was so many white tears were shed. It was very sad. They splashed all over the tiles. No, but she's my friend now. She became my friend not long after that point. But I remember the deep, deep shame that I felt at that moment, thinking I would never want anyone to perceive me as doing that. And I think for a long time, although my empathy and my care was genuine, I think that there was also a level of it where I wouldn't go so far as to say it was performative, but I just didn't want people to think that I didn't care. So I made sure people knew that I did, I guess. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then that only very recently changed for me. So,
you are grown-up Brittany, and what does this look like for you today? What does your growth process look like now for you? Right. So one of the things that let me just ask that question and put it out there for a second. What are your growth spaces currently as you're seeking? Social justice, as you're learning about people, where are those areas that are still, man, I can't believe or you're catching yourself, right?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, it an amount that embarrasses me when it happens. But I mean, it's not it's all day, every day. I guess I'd say probably at least I have an out loud whoa, why did you even think that thought for? Probably once every 2 to 3 days. That's a big one that I notice. I'm sure I engage in many of them all the time that I'm not even cognizant of. I've become a lot more aware because, as you know, I have OCD, and I finally got that diagnosis correct this year, and they treated it correctly. And now that my brain is not loud all the time about stuff that is completely irrelevant or that I'm making up, there's more space for me to think longer thoughts, I guess, when things are happening. So I'm a lot more able now to be like, oh, hey, why are you having this thought? And actually think about it, because there's room in my brain to do that, as opposed to before I would acknowledge it and then I wouldn't really be able to dissect it with myself until later.
Yeah.
And
I want to get to a few other points. The show's almost over, believe it or not.
okay.
But before that, so to the person that's saying, I'm hearing you, but taking on this just feels very heavy for me.
Sure.
Even just listening to you, Brittany, talk, it sounds like you've got to check yourself regularly, and I just don't want to do that. What is your conversation to that person?
Well, I think it depends on why the person feels that they don't want to do that. And I would be a little bit tougher on some people than others. I had to outright challenge my chiropractor the other night about him saying he just doesn't want to think anything negative. He doesn't want to have any negative thoughts. And I said, what if I told you that's exactly what I would expect a white man to say? And he was just like, and then I just kept making him have the conversation. And I think that if you're someone who it's hard and it's overwhelming, then I understand how that happens. I had to completely shut down to be able to take anything in and do anything about it. So I was just digesting more and more and more things that I should be doing, and I couldn't do all of them. So I stopped doing any of the things I was doing. And that's the wrong way to go about it. So I can't end racism by myself. It's just not a thing.
But
I can.
Pill.
The pill could.
Oh.
I'm more interested in the flying one. Just kidding. But what I can do is I can wear this shirt. I can have a conversation with someone at the park. I can give food to a homeless person that I see on the street. I can stand up for someone who's being verbally assaulted because of a characteristic that they have no control over out in public somewhere. Because I am now more well than I was in the previous few years, I have the ability and the mental fortitude to do that. It is my responsibility to do it if I have those two things. I don't feel shame for when I was very mentally unwell and I was just trying to stay alive. I was not also taking the day-to-day fight against racism in this country. But once I was well, I took it back up. I just took it back up in a different way that I am able to do. That way I'm not doing anything.
Right.
So it's overwhelming because it's challenging as a white person who wants to help to know how, especially when you think okay, I'm doing the right thing, I'm asking someone how to help, and they're like, it's not my job to tell you how to help, which it's not. But if you know nothing and you're at the very start of trying to learn, you don't know that it's an emotional labor you're asking someone for. These aren't phrases and words that I even knew of probably 5 years ago. I never thought about when a Black woman in a group that I'm in spent time trying to type something up in that way. I thought about it as oh, how kind of her and generous to but I never thought of it as unpaid emotional labor. This isn't a thing I knew. I didn't just wake up one day and know all of these things. I learned them bit by bit when I was able to.
So I heard a couple of things that you're talking about as far as steps for people that are listening, right? So one of them is doing something. You said there's an opportunity to do nothing.
Yeah.
And your shirt really speaks to this idea of taking little baby steps
Right.
in whatever your space is, and whether that's standing
Yes.
up for someone, whether that's seeing, it's just noticing and then taking a step to do something different.
Right.
Or even talking about it, right? But the other thing that you've mentioned is the education of yourself. You said that you didn't know certain things even 5 years ago, which meant you had to learn, you had to listen, you had to be reading, you had to be in spaces where these conversations are happening, and listen.
Listen.
Yeah.
You have to listen. You have to listen without being defensive, and you have to be ready to hear. I think. It sounds super cheesy, but whatever. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to listen to everything the person says if you are not open inside to hearing what they're actually telling you.
Right.
So if you're, for example, someone that I grew up with in my small white Midwestern town,
Sounds like a song. Just a small Midwestern town.
I mean, I do know some country tunes that would really highlight that. If you are someone from that town and you already have it inside of yourself, the notion that your way is the right way, so you're going to listen to someone because that's what is expected of you, that's the right thing to do. But if you're not actually hearing them, you're not doing anything. You're just letting them talk. You're wasting their time, is what you are doing. You are wasting their time and their energy. And that goes in both directions. You and I have talked about that also before. Like, no, I don't want to look at, someone that I'm sitting next to on an airplane and presume that they are going to be some bigoted, sexist man, which is a personal challenge that I have. Like, when I am around a white man, I am, like, my neck hairs are standing up. Like, I'm ready for something to happen. And I have to actively work for that not to occur. Much in the same way I imagine that, many black people and other people of color have to do with most people they encounter, like, in their world, depending where they are from. And
I would not push back. Actually, I'm going to push back a little, because I think that one of the things that people of color end up doing, because there's hundreds and hundreds of years of navigating this heavy system, is we've learned to navigate in oppressive situations and still be successful. It's one of the, when I'm doing Black History Month presentations, one of the great gifts of the Black community is I don't get angry every time I'm on the bus and I see a person that gives off certain vibes, right?
Okay.
Like, because I've had to, unfortunately, I've had to learn to just I was like, I'm gonna get cut 1,000 times a day. I'm not gonna worry about this one, right? I'm gonna save my energy for that bigger one that comes. So, I'm grateful for us having this conversation for a couple of reasons. One, you're honest. You tell us your growth areas and what you're working on, but you're also, here's what I'm doing, here's what I've done to get to where I'm at. Is there a way, if someone wanted to find that t-shirt, that they could find that shirt?
That they could get it, absolutely. My friend Christina, like I said, is the person who made it, and she does not only make t-shirts, but she is a writer, a performer, an artist.
Tell Christina she needs to be on the show.
I will tell her that you would like her to come on the show, but what I will not do is tell her to be
Don't tell her to be on the show. Say she
because
has an
what I've
invitation.
learned is that as a white woman, it is not my place to tell her to do anything.
Right on.
See, things like that,
I
they're
know.
important.
You're teaching me. Thank you.
Oh,
Do you
I'm
have a
teaching
website?
you. ChristinaSpringer.com, which will be in the notes for the show, I believe. It's ChristinaSpringer.com. And you can find the shirt there, or she also has an Etsy shop, and that shop link will be in the show notes.
Right on. Thank you so much, Brittany.
It's okay.
for being on the show. That's our time for today. If you have not joined the Care-Based Leadership community, log on to my website, carebasedleadership.org, and sign up for our monthly newsletters. And you can hear every episode of this podcast, schedule a free consultation, connect to all of my social media accounts. I'm at Dr. Paul Spradley. You can do all that on carebasedleadership.org. Thank you. Do it. Goodbye.